I'm on the phone with Lauren, who has a very interesting story, and for anyone who experiences issues with perfectionism, obsessiveness, as well as fear of public speaking and performance issues, you're going to find this very interesting. Lauren, thank you very much for being with us. Can you describe what was going on in your life when you first made the phone call to come into the program?
Sure. I was working at a relatively big company. I had been there for a few years. I had a mid-level position, but with a lot of responsibility. I had continually increased for the past couple of years, and I was in the middle of a conference call, which I had done, several times with two of my senior employees. And during the call, someone passed over the presentation to me before I was really ready to talk about that particular product. And at that moment, I was, felt unprepared, kind of caught off guard, and I started to feel my heart race and started to feel short of breath, and kind of went through something very quickly in about a minute when I probably would have spent a lot more time on describing that part of the product, kind of passed it over to the next person. And, after that call, I realized that, something had happened during that call that was not normal for me, and that I had had, an anxiety episode. That happened probably another 4 or 5 times in the next few months, a lot of times when it was, something pretty high level with a big client, with a lot of my, senior people on the phone, when I hadn't had a lot of time to prepare. And, after those few months, that's the first time that I kind of, realized that this was a pattern, that this was something that was obviously not kind of going away.
Okay, so now you said that you had your first panic attack. You had never had one before, right?
No, I had never had one.
And then you had a series of a half a dozen of them in a relatively short period of time.
Yes.
How was this impacting your life?
It was very, very difficult for me to deal with. I was very confused about what was going on. This had never happened to me before. Again, this wasn't a new job. I had been there for years. I had spoken in front of people before. I had done meetings and calls with clients before, and I was very confused, and I was very scared about what was happening, because I felt like it was really impacting my ability to do my job well, and it was making me, basically fear the going into the office and having these kinds of things happen over and over again.
And you made a decision to take a leave of absence because why? You were doing well on your job. You were making a very nice 6-figure salary. You chose to take the leave of absence because?
I think a few reasons. What was happening was obviously one of them, and it was the type of thing where, these kind of responsibilities were just going to get more and more for me, so it was going to be a situation where every day I was kind of in these situations. That was one reason. The second reason was I had already for quite some time, even before the first time I had the panic attack, I had been thinking about a career change, and that was really for just because I wanted to be in another field. It really had nothing to do with this, but it was really kind of the anxiety that was happening sort of, I think, pushed my decision kind of faster to take the time off and figure out what I wanted to do, but also deal with what was happening.
How was your mood during this period of time?
I would say I was, I felt a lot of stress because of everything going on, the responsibility and what was happening. For me, I think that I was pretty depressed. I didn't like the job, on top of which all of this was coming into play, making it harder for me to do it well. I didn't know if I should leave, if I should stay, and I was working, a lot of hours during the day. So I would come home and I was basically exhausted and
all right, so you were depressed, I think you're saying you were exhausted and you were burning out, and there was something else going on. You were worrying a lot, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I mean, before I was just, always stressed at work, not really loving it either, but I knew I could kind of do the job. When the anxiety set in, I had a lot of worry on top of everything else, like, what is happening? Why am I not able to do this? I was able to do it before. What am I going to do if I leave here? So, yeah, I think that was another layer.
Would you say that you were obsessing? I know I'm leading you,
yes.
but...
Yes, I think so. I think I had always wanted to leave, but I felt like, okay, I'm going to do this, and then, I'm going to leave at the top of my game, and, that's going to be my decision. And when all of this happened, I think that kind of threw me, and I was sort of obsessing about everything.
Would you refer to yourself as a perfectionist?
Definitely, yeah.
Give the listeners a little insight. I remember you went to an Ivy League school. You got what was your grade point average? What were you doing on Saturday nights? Yeah,
I mean, I went to a very competitive school. I had done well in high school. I went to a very competitive college. I had a very difficult major. I had always been a straight-A student in high school, so I wanted to be a straight-A student in college, which meant for what I was doing, a lot of studying, a lot of time, basically a lot of time studying. And I had that, that mentality throughout college, and I think that continued when I left and took my first job of sort of really wanting to do everything I did, perfectly.
When you were at work and when this anxiety was building, give an example of how you were obsessing and locked into the need to be perfect.
Sure. I think that, by the time that I had this kind of responsibility, I really knew my area fairly well for my level, and I had gotten, several sort of promotions along the way, which obviously, people give that to you because they think you're ready to sort of do the next step. I always, I was always feeling like I needed to know something top to bottom 100% before I could go talk to somebody about it, which is really kind of, impossible in many situations because these, the things that we were dealing with had a lot of detail, had a lot of layers. So for me, when I had a presentation, I would kind of sit there, and even if I knew, probably 90% of what anyone would talk about the next day, I always felt compelled to know, that last 10% down to the last detail before I personally felt ready, which meant, I never felt ready.
Now, for the sake of relativity, one of our famous 1 to 10 scales, 10 is the most, 1 is the least. We're measuring the severity of your overall problem when you came into the program. So that includes the anxiety, the avoidant behavior, the worrying, the obsessing, the mood. You would have given it a what number, 10 being the most?
I would probably give it a 9 to 10 at certain times.
Where do you think you're at now?
Right now, I think that...
Number-wise?
Yeah, I think I'm probably at like a 4 or 5, but given that I'm sort of going into the next phase for myself of things that I want to challenge myself at. But, if I had to judge right now, I would say I'm at about a 4 or 5.
A 4 or 5. So you're saying that about 50%